This is Duke University.
Good evening. Welcome. My name is Sterling Wilder, and I'm a member of the class of 1983 and the Director of Alumni Affairs. And we are so pleased to have you here this evening and really appreciate everyone taking time out of their busy schedules to be here. I want to thank the Duke Club of Philadelphia volunteers for their help tonight and throughout the year for all their efforts, so thank you for that. As we've said, we're just thrilled to be here in Philadelphia, and we're especially delighted to have with us this evening two great Duke leaders, President Richard Broadhead and Dean Nancy Andrews, who is Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs and Dean of the Duke School of Medicine. Also here tonight are Bob Shepard, Vice President for Alumni Affairs and Development, who I believe just stepped out, and, I shouldn't say that, that's terrible. It's my boss. He's coming right in the door in the back. Whew, I'm getting sweaty now. And then Mike Morsberger, who is a Vice President for Medical Center Development and Alumni Affairs, and Richard Riddell, Vice President and University Secretary. So what is the Duke idea? I am absolutely thrilled that after all this time, somebody, the Apples, God bless you, actually said to me, what is the Duke idea? Because I always think people wonder what it is, and now I know that somebody has actually asked that question, what is the Duke idea? So we began this series of events last November in Boston, and the speaker for that event was Blair Shepard, who is Dean of the Fuqua School of Business. And if you go online, you can see all the different speakers that we've had in the different cities. And it has been a world tour because we were in London in June, but we have been to many cities around the country, and actually this is our 12th event. And so again, it's great to be here, and what a beautiful setting. It really sort of looks like Duke. It's like being in the Gothic reading room, in a shortened Gothic reading room. So it's great, but I did hear that I missed the exhibit, and there are quite some interesting things here that I have not seen, and seeing the world's largest colon would have been a highlight of my day, and I apologize. On my next trip to Philadelphia, I will be back for that. So back to the Duke idea. So again, this is our 12th event, and we're delighted to be here. So what is it? So we've talked about that we do a world tour, but the really important thing is the meat of the program. And so tonight we'll offer you a little bit of a different spin on a traditional alumni program, and the purpose of this is to bring the intellectual excitement of Duke directly to you, our alumni parents and friends in the region. And through President Broadhead's conversation with the deans or senior administrators or the alums or the faculty members that we've taken on the road, you've been able to hear our alums around the country firsthand about the new and innovative programs that they are working on, their numerous successes. So we've been able to showcase Duke's priorities and goals and achievements in engaging and enjoyable settings. So that's what the Duke idea is. And tonight's program, as you know, one of Duke's highest priorities as a university is medical education and healthcare. And of course, we strive to be the best in the country, if not in the world. And in just a few minutes, you will hear President Broadhead interview Dean Nancy Andrews about those very topics. And thinking about, from their conversation, we hope that you will gain insight into their thoughts and comments on Duke's programs, and also learn about what we are doing in Durham to prepare and around the world, prepare and educate our students to become the next generation of those who contribute to society and who understand the importance and impact of sustainable health care. I know you'll have comments for both of our guests, and we ask that you hold those until the end. We will be taping this one as well, and so we ask that you turn off pagers, cell phones. I feel like a flight attendant, pager, cell phones. But it is important because it will conflict with the program, and also it'll distract you from listening to our speakers. So in a few minutes, I'm going to turn the program over to President Broadhead, who will give a brief State of the University address, and then he will call Dean Andrews up to the stage in a very Gothic sort of setting and have a conversation and questions, and then we invite you to return to the reception, where we'll continue with that and then have dessert. And I hope you'll have a chance then to visit with your fellow Dukies and also some great Duke staff members who have joined us here this evening. But before I turn it over to him, and we hear from him, from President Broadhead, and we hear our talk tonight, I wanted to let you know a little bit about Duke alums in Philadelphia And when I say Philadelphia, I mean the greater Philadelphia area, so I'm not shunning Delaware, New Jersey, but taking in everyone. We have just under 4,000 alumni and parents in the area, and actually 125 current undergraduate students from this area. And tonight, all of you are here, are part of the Duke family, and you are engaged with this event, but you come to campus and you're engaged and do so many other things for Duke. And how do you do that? Last weekend, we had at least four advisory boards on campus, and several of you were back for that. Incredibly invigorating to have so many folks back on campus. You volunteer for reunions, you serve on boards of visitors, you attend club events, you read the Duke magazine, you go to a reunion, you talk to a Duke roommate on the phone, and the list, you see a Duke bumper sticker on cars. I love that when you're not in Durham and see that. There's so many ways that you involve, and one also really key area here is we have 181 alums in this area who interview prospective undergraduate students. And that's a huge number, and this is an important area of an engagement for us, and so we're grateful for that, but for all the work that you do. So all of these points of engagement are incredibly important, and our job is to make sure that you sustain your engagement in whatever level it is and whatever time of life it is for you. I love that tonight we have folks who have just graduated, and we have people that have graduated at my old age, and then even some a few years older than me, and so that's really important. And so it's important to think of ways that you can sustain your engagement with Duke throughout your lifetime, and we want it to be enjoyable and fun and meaningful to you. So that's what we're all about, and so the tagline of the Alumni Association is Forever Duke. I know you're about to laugh when I look at you because you always say Forever Duke when he looks at me. So, but it is important, and it is about a lifetime of engagement, and so we hope that you will continue to stay involved at Duke. Okay, now that's over. So I actually will turn you over to the program, and it is my pleasure to introduce Richard Broadhead, who of course is Duke's 9th president and joined the Duke family in 2004. And since he arrived, has ushered in a new era of expansion, altruism, and investment at Duke. From the creation of the Duke Global Health Institute and the successful completion of the financial aid initiative to the launch of our civic service project program, Duke Engage, President Broadhead has been a true leader for our university. And if you haven't had a chance to meet him, he is terrific and just a great guy and can really cheer at basketball games, even though the man that sits near him wears that helmet head with the horns and throws candy. I think he's showing you up right next to you, but you're very gracious. But he is absolutely terrific, and it is my pleasure to turn the podium over in the program to President Broadhead.
Well, thank you very much, Sterling, or as I call you, Forever Sterling. It is a great pleasure to be here for an event that will eventually become about medicine, and we thought it was a great thing to do that program in something that Durham calls itself the city of medicine, but of course Philadelphia can certainly call itself the city of medicine as well. You have another of the very great academic medical centers here, and I pay tribute to it. You have many famous hospitals, other medical schools, all kinds of people. When I walk into the building and I see a picture of Benjamin Rush, I think that's pretty great. And when I see the most famous pictures of doctors ever painted were painted in Philadelphia by Thomas Eakins, and when I see one of them hanging downstairs, I think this would have been worth my while to come here just to walk through the door of this building. And so I am happy to connect Duke's contribution to the world of medicine to all those located in this city, and I welcome all of you in that spirit. Sterling gave you a concept of the program. I'm going to just tell you a few new things from Duke, not too great length, and then I'm going to introduce my partner in crime, who will come up, and then I'm going to chat with her. This will not be a hard exercise because it's what we do. You're my friend. I interviewed you once upon a time for a job. Now I can interview you just for fun. So that's good. Let me just say, if you're in my line of work, you know there's a seasonal quality to the university calendar. Our students come in August, and that's like spring in the university. And then for a long time, it's still the beginning of the term. And then the beginning lasts long, long time, and suddenly it's midterms. And that lasts a long, I can't understand why it lasts so long. But all of a sudden, you're through midterms, and then it's just about Thanksgiving, and then you know it's just about exams, and then you know it's just about the end of the term. And so really, we are, we were just at the beginning, and now all of a sudden we're starting to slide down toward the barn, I guess, for this term. But as I look back on this term, it has been, as usual at Duke, a season of high eventfulness. I'll just throw out some events from the last 4 or 5 weeks. At the beginning of October, Nancy and I and several other people went to Singapore for the opening of the building that houses the medical school that Duke built in partnership with the National University of Singapore. This has already become one of the major medical schools in Asia, a principal center for medical training, drawing students from all over Asia, and linking researchers at Duke with researchers in that extremely important and interesting part of the world. I came home, we opened that on, I left on Saturday, we opened it on Monday. There was a dinner on Tuesday, and I flew home, and on Thursday, we had the celebrations for the promotion of the Sanford Institute of Public Policy to status as a full-grown school. And what a success story that is. When I go to Washington and I go anywhere where there's people working on public policy in medicine or in environment or education or anywhere, people come running out of doors and say, oh, I wanted you to know I went to Duke. They all did, you know. At least Duke is one of the great places training people for the public sector, the intersection of intelligence and actual policy in all those areas. The pianist Murray Pariah, who I think you could argue is in the very top company of classical pianists in our age, gave 7 concerts this year. One at Carnegie Hall, one at the Kennedy Center, one at Disney in LA, none at universities except for one which he gave in Page Auditorium of Duke University. Why would that be? Because he's a Duke parent, and we gave him an honorary degree. And I think that was on he's now one of us. I think was on a Wednesday. That Friday, another of our alums came back. Do you know the name of Eric Shinseki? He was the Chief of Staff of the Army and is now the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. You may know that, but you may not know that he has an M.A. in English Literature from Duke. And he came back for a ceremony where we dedicated a new set of plaques honoring those fallen in all the wars at Duke. And he spent a whole long day just walking around, meeting with students, faculty, loving being there and giving a lot of himself. And that Saturday, this being the blessed year 2009, of course, we had a football game. And I didn't used to talk about those so much in my presentations. But I am here to tell you that on November, what's today, 17th, something like that, Duke has a 5-5 football record, and that you don't care about medical school, you don't care about classical music. But I mean, it really is phenomenal. Our players, you know, someone came who taught them how to reach deeper in themselves and achieve that level of success. It's been fun for our players. It's been fun for the whole university. I learned today, you know, the NCAA measures graduation rates of student athletes. Our graduation rate for student athletes went up this year from 96% to 97%. And that's a pretty, yeah, thanks. And who wouldn't want to go to a school like that? And therefore, it's not that surprising that our early decision applicants this year for admission to next year's freshman class went up 33% in 1 year. Okay? Okay, that's great. It's great. It's great. When I think back a year, let's take ourselves back in time to November of 2008. That was not a fun time to be alive. That was at a time when really the thing is you'd fallen off some kind of a cliff and no one knew if we were in free fall or whether it would eventually stop. I don't think very many people at that time last year would have been able to foresee that I would be able to rattle off the accomplishments and events of this fall this year. It is true that Duke will have to live on a smaller budget. We and many other people in the world, we're in the process of accommodating to that. I think that it's actually worked out. It's been approached with realism and cooperation by all. But I'm here to tell you we have not had any compromise of our core commitments. We raised $300 million for financial aid, as you know. Now more students need financial aid, and we are committed to meeting the full need of all the students we admit to Duke. That's not being cut at this time. We created the program 2 or 3 years ago called Duke Engage, where we said to students, we don't only want you to learn in classrooms, we want you to take what you learn in class and go out into the world, find out what the world looks like outside the world of super successful young people, find out whether you can take the things you learn and turn them to account, creating a clean water system somewhere, or helping with a literacy project somewhere, or helping with a health education project somewhere in this country or around the world. We've had 400 students in each of the last 2 summers at Duke's expense working around the world in that capacity, and we will not have one fewer student in that program as a result of the economic downturn. What I find most notable, though, is this. It seems to me the whole point of Duke, you know that Duke is a very innovative school. And the interesting thing to me is that during the downturn, the effect has not been to say, well, all right, let's protect our core activities, but let's give up the dream of innovation. Rather, this is a time when people have become more inventive rather than less so. And I think that that's in keeping with the Duke spirit of things. The Duke spirit of things is not to say, how much money can we possibly have, then let's figure out how to spend it. The Duke spirit is to say, what's interesting to do? What's important to do? And let's get that idea straight, and then let's use whatever resources we have to accomplish that goal. And so this is still a time when important things are being done. You know that Duke was not only built in good times. You know that the chapel was entirely built during the Great Depression. You know that the medical school was entirely built during the Great Depression. It is not an effect of prosperity. The Sanford Institute, which tried, Terry Sanford's idea was, let's not have economics be simply an abstract academic subject and political science and ethics be separate subjects. Let's pull them together and link them to the real world of trying to make things happen in the public sphere. The Sanford Institute was not created in a prosperous time. It was originated in the early 70s, and those of us of a certain age can tell you that was not a fun time from the economic point of view. And so I say to myself, why couldn't this too be a time when we're doing new and important things, when we're facing challenges by being inventive rather than by being simply stoical or defeatist? When I look at our business school, last year at this time, we had not yet dreamed up the idea of a post-baccalaureate 1-year Master of Management Science degree, the point of which is good to get a liberal arts education. Over the space of your life, it'll be great to have that rich education, but bad to get out of school with no recognizable skills. But on the other hand, we don't want to give you an MBA the year after you get out of college because you don't know enough to be an MBA student at that point. So what if we created a program specifically designed for people with new BAs to give them some business skills and give them an advantage in the market? That program was proposed in December of 2008. It was approved by the faculty in March 2009, and we welcomed 100 students into the first class in August of 2009. That's the kind of thing that has been going on at our place. The global health program gets bigger and bigger at this time. The Duke Law School has always had students who worked in Washington, but at this time we've been formalizing the concept of Duke in DC, where students go work in a government agency and take seminars at night, who teaches those seminars, among others, the new senator from Delaware. Aren't we in the Delaware catchment basin here? I think so. Ted Kaufman, a Duke alum, the only engineer in the United States Senate, who meets his roll calls all day and comes and teaches his Duke class at night. So I say to you, I think that when people look back at this time, they won't say, too bad all the momentum had to stop when the economy turned down. I think people will look at this time and say, through thick and through thin, that's a school that kept finding new ways to do what's important for a university to do. I'll pause at that point and make a transition to the second part of the program. Here's how I would explain the Duke idea. Everybody's tired of hearing from President Broadhead by now, and therefore, when he goes on the road, he takes a friend. And I thought this would be interesting because it enables me to show off the leadership of the university and also to give people access to the kind of intelligence that's to be found in universities on important subjects, such as that of healthcare. I guessed when we organized this event that the issue of healthcare would not be 100% resolved in America by November. Seems I was right. I'll introduce this person. I mentioned the Duke Medical School was basically founded during the Depression. How did you create something at that time that by our time is known by one and all to be one of the top 5 or 6 medical schools in America, one of the principal sources of medical research? One year we had the second highest number of NIT dollars coming to Duke for medical research, a principal place of care. Patients come from all around the country to be cared for at Duke. When Duke Medicine reached the point, I think it was 2 years back, when we needed a new leader, of course we go out, of course we're very picky, we identified lots of people, looked at them hard. I'll tell you, I've done a lot of searches. It's absolutely the most fun part of my job, but at a certain point, although you say, oh, don't fixate on any one person, there's always one person is the person you want. I just tell you this. And in this search, there was this person. I wonder who. And then the question arises, how are you going to get that person? Well, the person in this case was Nancy Andrews. Nancy had been an undergraduate at Yale. She'd done her MD at Harvard and her PhD in biology at MIT. She is a distinguished pediatrician. She works in pediatric oncology and is a noted researcher in that regard, who also has administrative talents. Not all academics do. These had led her to be asked to put back together the Harvard MIT MD PhD program, which she did. She then became the dean in charge of graduate education and basic research at the Harvard Medical School. She was at a place of some renown, and she had a position of some clout, and I'm going to guess she had a future with some prospects. And she had that on one side and Duke on the other side, and now she is the dean of the Duke Medical School. I do take some pleasure in the fact that she is also the first woman to be the dean of a top 10 medical school in America. Since coming to Duke, if you had bargained with us to ensure that there would be, say, 6 or 8 years of prosperity after you arrived, you should have thought to ask for that, Nancy. You came, you've been there for a time challenging to everybody in your line of work, and you have had great assets in addition to your sterling reputation and great intelligence, just your incredible human warmth and humanity, which has been such an addition to all of us. Plus, it's not everybody who's as nice as you who is as strong as you, and it's not everybody who is as strong as you who is as nice as you. It is a killer combination. And already in 2 years, Nancy has been just a wonderful addition to Duke. Why don't you come on stage? Oh. If you tripped and broken a limb, I'm sure any number of people in the house could have rushed forward and tended to you. This is, as I say, this is a simulation of a real-world activity. You and I have now known each other. We first met in an interview, but of course that just turned into a conversation, and now we've conversed on so many occasions. And it's, to be your friend is as great an honor as to be your colleague. Let me ask, let me just ask you some questions just for the efficiency of the occasion. Questions I figure people will want to know the answers to, and I'll just run through a couple. Okay, did you always, how did it happen? Were you somebody who like always wanted to be a doctor when you were little? What's the sort of story of how you became what you are now?
Well, I think I was somebody who had a great fear of becoming a pre-med as I was in high school, starting college, and learned that I really liked science in high school and went to college expecting to have a career in research, which I ended up having, but with some embellishment. During college, I was working in a research lab at Yale Medical School and started to see people who were doing both science and medicine, and hadn't occurred to me before that was a possibility, and got very excited about it, and really have never looked back. I stopped seeing patients now about 6 years ago. My last 4 years at Harvard, as Dick said, I was in the dean's office, and I had to choose between keeping my research lab, which has always been something I spend more of my time on than clinical care, and so at that point, stopped seeing patients. But
let's
I've
go back to
enjoyed
before
it.
you stopped seeing patients. Let's go back to when you did see patients. Tell us about, of all the possible fields of medicine, how it was you chose the one that you ended up making your mark in.
Well, so I'm a pediatrician, and as an MD PhD student, I don't know if this is still true, I hope not, but at least at the time that I was deciding, there was a very strong push to do either internal medicine or pathology. I think now MD PhD students branch out a lot more, but I really like kids, and I really liked working with the families. Actually, I was having a conversation with someone about this earlier tonight. One of the great things about taking care of children is that almost always there are people who want to be involved in the care, and it's a family activity rather than just taking care of your patient, and I like that. I liked developmental issues, thinking about the kinds of medical problems that arise because of your genetics rather than because of what you drink or smoke or do to yourself. And I think I finally realized that pediatrics was for me when I was doing a rotation at Children's Hospital Boston as a medical student, and I was going up in the elevator, and the doors opened on the floor where the operating rooms were, and I saw this cart that you may have seen before, which has all of the cloth-wrapped, sterilized equipment that's going to get used in the operating room. And on the very top of this big cart were the little three-wheel tricycles that the kids would ride on as they were getting out of the recovery room. And I just thought, this is for me.
That's good. Okay, that was for you, but then, and I have some understanding of this, but I'll be interested to hear your version, a person who had a calling to research and to care also found a calling to administration. People don't go into academic life to be administrators, but some of them need to become administrators. How did that work out for you?
Well, I think that what happened was I saw a problem that I think for all of us, there are things you can't stand to see broken. There's some things you just don't care whether they're broken or not. But having been an MD PhD student in the program at Harvard, when I was new on the faculty and very involved with admissions for that program, I realized that it had a lot of issues that hadn't improved since I was complaining about them as a student. And I couldn't stand to see them broken, and so started in every way I could to try to fix them. And that eventually got me the job of director of the program. I had no inkling that was going to happen, but had a lot of fun trying to fix those problems.
So that happened, and then the next thing happened, and then the next thing happened. And now, of course, I approach the thing everybody in this room is eager to hear about. You probably had you even ever been to Duke before you were interviewed?
No.
Okay, you had never been at Duke before you were interviewed.
Do I have to leave now?
So, oh no, it's perfect. So here was what I would ask you is just give us as honest an account as you can. What did the Duke possibility look like to a person who was already utterly successful and well-placed where you were?
Well, so I first came down to look really for two big reasons. One, because Duke has a great reputation, and I had looked at a couple of dean jobs and hadn't really found anything that I was interested in looking at very carefully at that point. And so the reputation, and also I had been in total ignorance telling people for years that I wanted to live in North Carolina because I thought it must have the perfect climate. It was right in the middle of the country. And this is actually true, and I'd never even been there, but I'd heard great things about it. And so I thought, fantastic school in North Carolina, I'll take a look. And when I arrived there, I was completely charmed. You may remember after I accepted the job, about a month before I officially started, I was introduced to the whole community.
I well remember it.
I described the things that I thought I had seen and the things that had attracted me to Duke, and I'll tell you about those in a second. But I realize every time I've gone back to look at that talk in the 2 years and 2 months since, the things that I thought I saw on that first visit were truly the values and the character of the institution. And so I don't know how I realized that so quickly on early visits, but the collaboration, the interest in fixing real world problems and not just scholarship for the sake of scholarship, although we have some of that too, but an intense interest in really doing things that would make a difference, to use words we use a lot. And an international perspective, I think Duke has been way ahead of other universities in realizing that we can't think about ourselves as being just in Durham or even just in the United States anymore. And then a lot of warmth. I felt tremendous warmth every time I went there. And I don't think it's just because people are nicer in the South, although I've heard that. But I think it was also because Duke people really connect with each other in a way that I hadn't experienced. So.
Okay. You have told me now at intervals of about 8 or 10 months each that what Duke turned out to be was exactly what you thought it was when you first looked at it. I find this remarkable.
I guess I have a bad memory.
This may or may not interest anybody. I myself gave a speech when I took a job at Duke, in which I described what I thought the place looked like. And when I look at that speech, I think that's just exactly what I've always found Duke to be. And it's not too different from what you just described. Okay, so you're in a line of work that is of intense importance to people in the modern world. We live in a time when probably no field of intellectual discovery has made more profound advances than biomedicine. We live at a time when healthcare now takes up almost 20% of the American economy, and sometime it will be more than that.
Yes.
So of all, we have lots of schools and we have lots of fields, but yours has a kind of a resonance or consequence. But it's also a field that has been under lots of stress for lots of years, and I've been in academic world long enough to know everybody always wants to be pre-med before they go to college, and then they hear that it's so hard to be a doctor and so hard to be this and that, and the next year everybody wants to be pre-med all over again. But so at this intersection of all this importance and sort of all this stress, let me ask you some questions. Let me start on the research side. In this country, we have had a partnership, there's nothing like it before the modern era, the partnership between the government investing on behalf of the public and universities as the places of pure inquiry. And if it weren't for that partnership, we wouldn't have modern biomedicine as we know it. How would you sort of assess the current and future prospects of this, this model of research?
So I think that has been a remarkably successful model. I think one of our failings as biomedical researchers is that until pretty recently, we haven't felt as much responsibility as we should have to let the public know how much has been accomplished in the 60 years since the NIH started handing out research grants. It's grown very quickly over the past 30 or 40 years, but the NIH dates back to around 1940, depending on when you consider the start. And the accomplishments have been tremendous, and the things that we are currently poised to do in biomedical science that we know how to do, or we know enough about how to do to get them done, but just can't get to yet because there's so much to do, or can't get to yet because of funding. it's tremendous. But I think that that's also what makes it so stressful for us now. And I worry particularly about young people who are excited about science, who want to use their talents in science to advance medicine, but are getting discouraged because they see people struggle for research grants. If you set aside the recent NIH stimulus package from the government, it had gotten to the point where your chances of getting funded for a research grant were less than 1 in 10. Your chances of getting funded on your first try were less than 6%. It was somewhere in the 4 to 6% range. And this is after
years and years.
That's right. This is after tremendous investment on the part of society to get people to the point where they have PhDs and postdoctoral experience, or MDs and PhDs. And so these are people who we've already invested a tremendous amount in, and they're struggling and resubmitting often 3 times. That's what it's been pre-stimulus and may well be post-stimulus, to get funded for a situation where, you know, they're dedicated, they're smart, they know what to do, and they just need the money to carry it out. So I worry a lot about what that looks like to young people. I think those of us who have seen some ups and downs of federal research funding over the years are less uncomfortable than young people who have only seen this bad time. But in the entire history of the NIH, the last 6 years have been the only period where the budget has been flat or has gone down slightly in the entire history for more than 2 years.
You gave a great talk in Washington last year on this subject, on the sort of potential talent drain when people see that after all these years of preparation, your chances for success in being able to take the next step in your career were so small, and how that could simply turn people off from going into it. But your answer a minute ago hinted at something else, which is I've met people, and surely you have, who say, well, gee, you know, actually there's a lot of things that are calling out for government money at this time.
Yeah.
And so NIH, of course, is in competition with many other people. And what do you say to somebody who says the government doubled the NIH, right? And yet at the end of the doubling of investment in biomedical research, cancer wasn't cured at the end of that time? And so, you know, I mean, I'm sure you've heard people say this.
Yeah.
So how do you answer that? You said a minute ago a lot has been done, but put the case that I'm a congressman from choose the state of your choice, and that I'm looking at you saying, I don't know, I think medicine's good, but there's a lot of others. We're under a lot of stress these days. What's the best case you could make, or what's the best way you could put the nature of the return on the investment that's been made?
Well, I don't remember the numbers offhand, but people have put numbers to how many dollars per year it's taken to prolong survival from heart disease. You know, in 1987, when my husband's father had sudden coronary artery occlusion walking down the street, he died suddenly. A few years after that, he could have, when he was taken to the hospital, had thrombolytic therapy that would break open the clots in his arteries, and just with a medical therapy or with angioplasty or with other things that have come since, his life would have been prolonged. The quality of his life would have been normal or near normal, potentially. So there are, people have put numbers on that, and I don't remember offhand, but it's something on the order of a few dollars per person per year for that kind of advance overall. The NIH budget's around $30 billion. It's a lot until you think about the defense budget, and then it looks smaller.
Oh, I'm not going there. Well, I'm just thinking about 10 days ago, we did the groundbreaking for the new cancer center at Duke. And it was very interesting on that occasion. I had somebody dig out for me the information on causes of mortality in America. And 80 years ago, cancer was only the seventh greatest cause of mortality. And this isn't because there's been an epidemic of it, but because medical research has actually mitigated the effect of so many other.
And almost everything above cancer on your list was an infectious disease.
That's
and We're still finding new infectious diseases popping up that
Sure.
we don't yet know how to cure or prevent. But boy, the changes over the last 100 years in what we can do there has been very dramatic.
It's amazing. Let me ask about, an academic medical center is based on the proposition that research and teaching of the health workers of tomorrow and the care of patients all get better when you do them all together, when you're able to bring research to care, when you're able to bring the training of doctors to be connected to research. Let me ask about the whole question of education nowadays. You're the head of a medical school, and do you, and I think that there is a kind of common notion that medical education has been under a kind of heavy hand of formulaic officialdom for a long, long time. First of all, is that accurate, and do you see that as something that's changing?
So our current model of medical education, for most of the United States, it's different in Europe, different in Asia, other than our medical school in Singapore.
Right.
But medical education in this country is almost unchanged for the last 100 years.
Since the Flexner Report, and that's like 98 years ago.
Now 100, well, almost 100. It'll be 100 next year, that's right. And so the Flexner Report was basically medicine should be based on science. It was a very strong move for allopathic medicine, what we know of as modern medicine, to push out of the way other approaches to taking care of people and keeping them healthy. And it established a system where medical students have 2 years of science and then 2 years of clinical work. Now, Duke moved away from that, I think something like 40 years ago, to have our curriculum where it's 1 year of very intense science, 2 years of clinical work, and then 1 year of research, or in modern times it can be research or a second degree, a Master's of Public Health, a PhD, extending things out a little bit longer.
Individuated independent work of some sort.
Yes. But other than the Duke model, it's pretty much unchanged for all that time. I think now it's beginning to change very fast, in large part because of the technologies available. We use simulators much more, so we have simulation in the sense that we have all sizes and shapes of mannequins that can talk to you and have heart rates and respond to injections of drugs and can be resuscitated, can not be resuscitated if you do the wrong thing. And so that's something that's become very important for education, not only of medical students, but also of residents and even for retraining of doctors in practice. And then simulation in a different way where students can be, or learners can be anywhere in the world controlling avatars in a virtual environment with other people from other places. And working on team building skills there, how to react to a crisis, how to decide who does what. And so simulation technology on many levels is becoming very important. And I think that for us, that's a big part of the change, the future.
I have, the president gets to go everywhere, and I have been to these incredible facilities that you have where you have a simulation family. It's like Sim Mom and Sim Dad. What are they actually called? It's something pretty close to that, okay.
Something
then
close
there's like
to that.
Sim Boy, is the, okay.
I don't remember.
And the whole point is that somebody elsewhere in the room can change the conditions or change the numbers, and then and so you have to see if somebody's able to respond to these quickly enough. And actually you have simulation for surgery, all kinds of delicate procedures. It's extraordinary.
And as we think about this, you may be mentioning this in a moment, or perhaps you did and I've forgotten, but we are now working towards building a new learning center that I hope, along with simulation, which will be an important part of it, I hope will be a place for learners of all kinds on our campus. So our medical students are actually only about 20% of the learners on our campus. We have PhD students, we have postdoctoral fellows, residents, of course, physical therapy students, physician assistant, pathologist assistant students, students getting master's degrees, but we also have other kinds of learners like faculty who need to learn a new technique, or even
nursing school.
part of what I'm imagining for this learning center is that a family that needs to learn, for example, how to do a procedure on a child going home from the hospital who has a tube in the stomach or a tracheostomy might come to our learning center and also be learners there. I think it'd be wonderful for it to serve all of those purposes.
It's phenomenal. And famous as the Duke Medical School is, and also the Duke Nursing School, it has been a great education for me to learn. I did not know that Duke is the first place that had a physician's assistance program, and that this idea of a sort of graded series of people who can work together to do the part each of them is trained to do.
And I think that that's going to be a critically important part of our future in healthcare. I think the only way that we're going to be able to meet the needs of healthcare as our population ages and as chronic diseases become the primary issue rather than acute diseases for many people taking care of patients. I didn't mention nursing students actually a moment ago because they're not in the medical school, but of course they are also welcome, will be welcome in our learning center. But I think that that'll be a place where teams can learn to work, and already we're working on, we have had for a while, for a few years, experiences for our learners to bring together medical students and students from other health professions in teams. But we're working on enhancing that and finding new ways to not only bring the teams together, but also deliberately have students think about new models of care and how they might be leaders in working those out.
Well, I guess that in a way that begins to answer the question I was going to ask next, which is this. I've purposely not asked you about the politics of healthcare.
Good.
I mean, the politics of healthcare, everybody can read about it. Everybody has their own views. And to some extent, Nancy, pardon me if I say so, I don't look to you to tell me if there should be a public option or a not public option. In a way, that's not the kind of thing that a medical school is best at giving the best answer to. But there is a question that's very important for medical school to have an answer to, which is if all of a sudden a lot more people should have access to medical care in this country, where's the medical care going to come from?
So I think that we're going to see, and this is really key to medical education too, and how we think about it. As we learn more, as we understand diseases better, as we get to a point where treatments are increasingly based on evidence rather than intuition, I think it becomes more possible for the care of patients to be distributed among teams of people who have different kinds of backgrounds and bring different skills, different perspectives to medical care. So I think that we're not going to solve the problem by having more doctors, but I think we'll solve the problem by having teams that will include doctors and nurses and physician assistants and probably other health professionals whose careers haven't been invented yet, who will all bring different things, and we'll have to redefine, from our perspective, thinking about the medical students, what a doctor should know and what kind of skills she or he should bring to this team effort to take care of patients.
What do you need a doctor for? What do you need somebody else for? What do you need somebody else for? What do you need somebody else for? What do you need even maybe not a professional for? Because you talk about the idea, we all know, those of us with aged relatives, that there's a kind of care that doesn't involve professionals, but you need some training to do it. I think the medical school that could figure out not only how to train people for these different niches, but how to train those people to work together, and how to train a community to understand the resources it has available at every level would really be in a leadership role.
I think so, and interestingly, I think technology is really key to this too, because one of the problems with having teams and having multiple people taking care of someone from different perspectives is making sure that everybody has the information that they need to do it, so that you're not duplicating or you're not doing things that are going to be antagonistic in the care instead of cooperative.
Well, and so everything you've done with medical records and the fact that at any site in the Duke system you can call up the information that was entered somewhere else, all incredibly important. Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question, and then I will throw it open to our friends, which is just this. Say you were a young person of, say, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, who was a little interested in science, a little interested in the welfare of humanity. What's your advice to them about?
Well, I laugh because I'm living this right now. As you know, I have a daughter who just turned 17.
I didn't mention you're taking your son to all his baseball practices while you were dean at Harvard.
And I have a son who is almost 14 and a daughter who's just turned 17 who has been working on her college application essays. And it's very interesting because I've learned by seeing what she writes, I've learned a lot about her, but she is a young woman who is very interested in science, is fascinated by people, loves to watch people, and is very interested in other cultures and has taken every opportunity to immerse herself in other cultures. And she's interested in global health, which is, I think, very exciting. Maybe that's Duke rubbing off on her.
It could be. It could be. I got to take her to her first Duke basketball game, as I also got to take you. Yes. It all rubs off. We'll be here afterward, and we could talk in smaller groups or whatever. But are there a couple of questions that I've monopolized this, which I've much enjoyed, but now I'm willing to share it a little, sir.
Yes.
What is the purpose of doing additional research if it can't be implemented down the road? And should we be spending money providing care to people without this research? I mean, it seems to me that nobody expected human beings to live beyond 65 when they passed the Social Security Act.
That's right.
And I mean, my take on it is when they passed Medicare in 1965, no one expected the expenditures to be as great as they are. And the longer we keep people alive, the more we spend, and it becomes more and more disruptive to the rest of the society. So why spend money for research if it can't be implemented?
Yeah, and I think that there's several interesting things in what you've just asked. One of them is the implementation, and that's a huge problem. You can have the best medicines in the world, and you can have the best doctors, but if the patient either can't buy the medicine or doesn't want to take it because of side effects or doesn't really believe that he or she needs it, or for whatever reason it doesn't get delivered, then it doesn't do any good. And I think one of the things that we haven't spent enough time thinking about in the past, and I realize this isn't exactly your question, but I'm going to take advantage of it anyway. One of the things we haven't spent enough time thinking about is whether people actually get the care we think we're giving. And that's an area that I think is going to take some real leadership to work on. And that's the kind of area that Duke-trained doctors think will be very well equipped to address. But the other part of the question is, why do research if for whatever reason you're either prolonging life or patients aren't going to have access to it? Well, the traditional models of research, I think, are going to have to change. So in the past, not always, but often, when a pharmaceutical company developed a drug, they developed the drug with the mindset that you would take it for your cholesterol or your blood pressure or whatever for the rest of your life. But suppose that you had drugs or treatments of some kind, maybe not drugs, maybe gene therapy or stem cell therapy or something we don't know about yet. Suppose you had a treatment that actually very quickly and efficiently cured the disease. So you went from having the problem one day to, instead of having to take something for the rest of your life, having it fixed a short time later. That research that would get us to that kind of efficient curative treatment would save tremendous amounts in healthcare. I mean, all the doctor's visits you wouldn't have to make sure that your drug levels were right or your blood pressure was responding. And so I think that if we can refocus and have the applied part of medical research focus not on trying to give people medicines they're going to have to take for the rest of their lives, but have a deliberate goal of trying to cure things fast, there are real savings there. that we could use for other things. So that's just one example. And there are many other aspects to medical research, but I think that it can make people's lives better, not just longer.
Please.
My name is Marty Romney, and I'm a proud alum of the School of Nursing,
Yes,
so
you are.
thank you acknowledging. My question is, in the medical curriculum, how do issues of health disparity and cultural and linguistic competency get integrated into the program?
Yeah, they come up in many different aspects of the curriculum. I think they start when the students first arrive, and I don't know details about this program, but the medical students are sent out to work on different projects in Durham within their first week or two on campus. And right from the beginning, they get a very strong message that you're part of a community, you have obligations to this community, and this is a community where people have differential access, where there are health disparities, and that's a problem that we as a medical school, we as a university, have a responsibility to try to fix.
That's great. That's a great answer. Please.
High cost of healthcare today and the growing healthcare inflation, do you think there's a role for doctors in terms of understanding cost effectiveness for treatments, given that doctors are primarily focused on providing best care for their patients? And is there a role in that cost effectiveness side for doctors in the future and in medical education?
I don't think doctors can ignore it, and I think it is something that needs to be part of medical education. I think it needs to come in also as clinical effectiveness research and interest in actual proof that things that we think should work truly do work. Duke has a very, very strong clinical research effort, and a big part of what they do now, having done it in trials that involve 1/2 billion people around the world, DCRI, a big part of that is asking some about cost effectiveness, but also about treatment effectiveness, and a big part of that is the newer or more expensive or fancier treatment, or even less invasive treatment, is it really better for the patient? And I think that it's a relatively modern thing to be asking that question, because we've often, as a profession, assumed that we knew the answer, that newer had to be better, or the biological treatment had to be better than the chemical treatment. But I think it's going to be very important to ask that deliberately, both to make care better and also to think about how we're spending money on healthcare in a more deliberate way.
Rick.
What is Duke on the clinical side doing now to try to measure effectiveness? And I'm not just talking about medications, I'm talking about the whole treatment of patients. I got a new knee in June, it worked great, I was lucky. But what struck me is how little, as a business even, how little the hospital, and I went to a very good hospital, how little that hospital did in terms of trying to disaggregate variables and put them up and measure them, as I would have done in running a business. So where's Duke on that?
I think that this is something that we are increasingly getting into, is having our hospital and our health system be a self-examining environment where we ask questions not only about treatment effectiveness, but also about the delivery of care. Are we doing it in the best way? Are patient outcomes good with different kinds of measurements from what we've used before? I think having it can be a painful thing for a hospital or a health system to look at itself in that way, but I think we recognize the importance of doing that, and of thinking about aspects of improving care that aren't just getting patients out of the hospital faster, but making sure that they go out and have better outcomes, and trying to find things that we can do better in much the way that a business would, but with the emphasis being on better outcomes for patients.
And there's another dimension of this that's so strong at Duke, which is that medicine is located partly in medicine, but it's partly located in all the other schools, because after all, Fuqua has one of its great specialties, health sector management, and
Yes.
sort of that, in a sense, you'd find part of the answer to your question in collaborations between
Yes.
Fuqua people and,
Yes.
and medical people. You'd also find it in people in the Sanford Institute, which has as one of its specialties healthcare policy. I think of the new connections, one of the really exciting ones that we will see unfold in the future are the connections between our environment school and
Yes.
the medical school, because the world has only begun to pay attention to the fact that every medical issue has an environmental dimension, and every environmental
Yes.
issue has a medical dimension. Duke is almost uniquely set up to explore that interface. I didn't mention engineering, but of course biomedical engineering was almost born at Duke.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen the amazing new engineering building, the whole point of which is it links engineering and medicine,
Yes.
and with our Genomic Institute right in the middle of it, I think that actually will turn out to be a big part of the answer. Please. Here comes the mic.
I've personally had 7 orthopedic surgeries, including 3 at Duke.
Oh, wow.
During
This
my
is
year.
before you climb Mount Everest.
This was before I climbed base camp of Mount Everest.
Wow.
But, thinking about all the different areas where the medical school is now integrating itself, one of the things that I've seen is the continuum of bedside manner, for lack of a better term, of the doctors that I've had. And I've had some of the best doctors in the world treat me. I've been very fortunate. But I guess I'm curious, and that to me is a huge piece of your experience with doctors and with how you
Yes.
feel that you've been treated and how your outcome is after your experience. So besides 1 year of hardcore science and 2 years of residency, what is Duke doing to try to help create that better atmosphere where you take your nose out of the book and remember that
Yeah.
you're treating people?
Yeah, very, very important. So I think the first thing we do is a major part of our selection for medical students is looking for what our director of admissions calls well-developed humanism. And that is a very strong selection. Recently, a colleague from outside of Duke was trying to convince me that we should have an honor system so that we honored students who showed great humanistic qualities. And I said to him, that's something that we look very hard for in all of our students. They have to have grades that tell us that they can do the work, but that's a critically important selection factor. And he said, no, you don't mean to tell me that you're really looking for that in all your students. And I said, yes, we truly are. So I think that we think we get the right students in that way. I think one of the challenges is when they're getting hit with so many things, so much to learn, the emotional experiences of being a young adult and seeing some very sick people and bad outcomes. I mean, that's a lot for students to deal with. And I think that the challenge is to keep that humanism alive during those years and to make sure that we not only keep it alive but continue to develop it through the time that they're students and then as residents. And it's something we're very conscious of trying to do a good job of.
That's a great question and a great answer. I see one more. I see 2 more.
Good evening. Thanks. I'm a biomedical engineer from Duke University, but I have a different question regarding medical education. One of the big concerns that my physician friends have is the costs they've incurred for their education. And there's the undergraduate program of financial aid, and I was a benefit of financial aid at Duke, so I've very much appreciated that. But I'm just wondering how the two can combine, especially in this healthcare reform era, because even though various groups have supported the healthcare reform, the effect on incomes, whether you're an anesthesiologist or a family practice physician, can greatly affect how much you earn, and prior to that, what you decide to go into.
Exactly.
Hopefully you're going into it for patient care, not for financial reasons. But that's a reality. So how how can Duke respond to incenting its students to choose the best path to globally improve care, to improve care in Durham through a family practice or a pediatrician or a general practitioner versus a high-tech physician, and not incurring, going that low reimbursement route?
Sure.
Are there any opportunities there?
So no surprise, this is a national issue. And ultimately, I think an ideal solution would be to have medical school paid for in some other way so that the burden didn't rest on the students. We're not going to get there for a while. It's something that we're unfortunately pretty far away from being able to afford. But I think what Duke has done is to have a very aggressive financial aid program so that our students graduate with significantly less debt. Most of our students have some debt, but it's significantly less than most of our peer institutions, most medical schools in the country, and cost of living in Durham being lower than some of the areas where our peer schools are helps too. But this is a problem we worry about a lot, and the financial aid initiative has been very important in helping us to maintain our aggressive financial aid, but it's a huge problem.
And you understand, just as Nancy said, it's something a university can do everything it can to mitigate. And when we raised the $300 million for financial aid, that assisted students in every school of Duke. At the same time, it is really impossible for any school to be wealthy enough to solve the problem you just mentioned.
Yeah.
It's a problem of the incentives that are put out there for very talented people with their choice of careers. The incentives at the moment are set in such a way that you have to really be working against your own self-interest in a very significant measure to end up, if you're a top talent person, in some of the places where we badly need healthcare in this country. That's a question, you might say that's a question for healthcare reform.
I think so.
Sir.
Thanks. Following up on the prior question about bedside manner and also on President Broadhead's remark about aged parents, my experience with the healthcare system is through aged parents and in-laws and spending way too much time in hospitals. And one of the things I've been amazed at is the dysfunctionality among the different players in the hospital. And that's just among the physician specialists. That's before you get to the nurses, the therapists, none of whom talk to each other, many of whom seemingly do not want to talk to each other. So I guess, and from a lay perspective, it's an amazing experience to go into a hospital. People assume that when a doctor comes in and says he's a specialist in something, you know what he's talking about. And my father's in his 90s. He has no clue. I'm a little more with it, and I struggle to keep up. Have you ever studied, or are there people who think about the hospital as an organism, such as to how to make the whole hospital work together as sort of a unified whole?
Yeah, there are people who think about that, and I think those are very good points. We end up making a lot of assumptions about what experience our patients are having without really seeing it from their perspective. And I also have older parents and have had similar experiences, not at Duke. My parents haven't been treated there, but other places. This is something that we need to solve, and this comes back to the idea that healthcare needs to be a team effort, and it needs to be a team that functions well, has respect, each member of the team has respect for every other member and for what he or she brings to it, and where the communication is optimized for the patient's care rather than for some other purpose.
It's amazing. I'll just say one thing. You know, a very funny thing about American universities is that they have sports teams. There are other countries of the world have university systems, and they tend not to have this thing. And why do we have them? Because they're fun, That's part of the reason, but it's not the only reason, because sports have something to do with discipline, and they have everything to do with teamwork. And it's funny to think that the rest of the educational apparatus should be learning at this late date that actually one of the most profound lessons that students need to learn as they get ready for any career they're going to have is teamwork. That there's no situation in which any one person alone can be of supreme value. The value arises from putting people together with other people who have complementary but not identical skills with a common sense of what you're trying to accomplish, and then you go out there and work together. I'll just say one thing, and I trust your parents were also not treated at my fine institution, but I only wanted that to be perfectly clear. That it's an interesting thing. The incentive system of people who work in the Duke University health system pays very significant heed to the question of teamwork and of the metrics of teamwork and success of teamwork. And I think that that's really a way for the university to say, we not only expect this, but we understand that this is really the precondition for successful care.
Yes.
I'll take one more, and then let's go out and have some more party, please.
Thank you. I'm very interested in the sustainability of the high level of Duke research that continues now. And in the post-stimulus world that you just mentioned, what is the current dependency, and what is your vision for the future in terms of funding for Duke research, in terms of how it's allocated between government, industry, donations, and you mentioned DCRI and other functions like that?
So the sources of support for our research, the largest by far is the federal government through the NIH. And as President Broad had mentioned, we are in the top few schools every year. We move around a little bit in NIH funding. And that, so that's by far the biggest source of support. The second biggest is industry. We have a lot of partnerships where in carefully designed ways to make sure that conflicts of interest are not an issue that will interfere with the research. We have faculty who participate in studies that are funded by industry. We have some funding from philanthropy, primarily foundations, but also individuals that can be very important for types of research that isn't funded by the federal government. Not clear yet what the post-stimulus world will look like. And the funny way that medical research funding works, even though the stimulus program was announced now more than a year ago, and applications have gone in and we know about awards, the amount of money that's actually arrived on campus so far is very small.
The stimulation is just beginning.
Yes, and so we're going to continue to be stimulated for a while. But Duke did very well. We're still counting what's coming in, but so far it looks like as a university, it's going to be something on the order of 165, 170 million or maybe more dollars in research funding, which helps a lot. There's a lot of important science that can get done with that kind of funding. The problem is that after that, if we go back to the same situation where the NIH was before, there are a lot of things that are going to be far along and on the verge of being finished or getting the results that are going to have to slow down. And so we'll still be able to do the work. It's just we're not going to get there nearly as fast if the NIH budget starts to falter again.
Well, you know, I'm going to guess whatever question you could ask in this room, Nancy Andrews could give a pretty interesting and informative answer to. And I'm going to guess you've begun to draw that conclusion after this little short encounter. I'll just wrap up by saying one thing. You asked the question about the humanistic quality of medicine. But you know, the thing is, people say it, but it really is true. That has to be founded in the leadership, or you're not going to find it all the way down through the organization. And one of the things that has just been such a pleasure for me is that you can walk into any room of researchers and you command their total respect for your research accomplishments. You can walk into any room of Duke administrators, the other deans at Duke you're their friend, everybody loves to cooperate and collaborate with you, and that's true too. But I'll tell you, I would really defy a person to find the person who has a sense of the humane foundation of medical science and ambitions in excess of you. So thanks for coming. That's the Duke idea. This is a good example of it.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.